happened 14 years ago, in my hometown. Picture this: a quaint suburban settlement, the kind where everyone knows everyone, and nothing ever seems out of place. But behind the facade of normalcy lies a darkness that few dare to acknowledge, a darkness that I unwittingly stumbled upon one fateful day. Let me set the scene for you. I'm Alex, a 17-year-old kid with a thirst for adventure and a group of friends who are always up for a thrill. We're your typical suburban misfits, spending our days skateboarding and exploring the forgotten corners of our town. And on this particular day, our curiosity led us deep into the heart of the woods that bordered our neighborhood. The forest loomed before us, a labyrinth of twisted branches and ominous shadows. But we were undeterred, eager to uncover whatever secrets lay hidden within its depths. As we ventured further into the wilderness, the sounds of civilization faded into the background, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of unseen creatures. That's when we stumbled upon it, a sight that would haunt my nightmares for years to come. The body of a man, lying crumpled among the undergrowth, his lifeless eyes staring blankly into the abyss. Blood pooled around him, staining the earth crimson and painting a macabre picture of violence and despair. It was a scene straight out of a horror movie, one that I never imagined I'd witness in real life. Panic surged through my veins as I staggered back, my mind struggling to comprehend the horror before me. My friends were frozen in place, their faces plastered with shock and disbelief. But there was no time to dwell on our fear, for in that moment, something even more terrifying emerged from the shadows. It was him, the serial killer that had been the talk of the town for weeks. His face was pale, etched with cruelty, his eyes devoid of any trace of humanity. We had heard the rumors, seen the sketches plastered on every street corner, but nothing could have prepared us for the chilling reality of encountering him face to face. Time seemed to stand still as he loomed over us, his presence casting a dark shadow over our little group. I could feel his gaze boring into my soul, stripping away the illusion of safety that I had always taken for granted. And as quickly as he appeared, he vanished back into the depths of the forest, leaving us shaken and terrified in his wake. We fled from the woods, our hearts pounding in our chests as we raced back to the safety of civilization. But even as we left that nightmare behind, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had only scratched the surface of the horrors that lurked within those woods. The memory of that encounter still haunts me to this day, a constant reminder of the darkness that lies just beyond the edge of our reality. It was supposed to be a father-son bonding weekend. My dad, a big burly guy with a love for the outdoors, decided we'd head out to the forest for some quality time. I was 15, lanky and a bit awkward, more comfortable with a game controller than a fishing rod. But I was excited to spend time with him, to learn some survival skills and maybe catch my first fish. We set up our camp by a serene lake, surrounded by dense trees. As the sun dipped below the horizon, we built a fire, roasted some marshmallows, and shared stories under the stars. It was peaceful, the kind of tranquility that makes you forget about the chaos of everyday life. But as darkness enveloped the forest, an uneasy feeling settled over me. The fire crackled, casting eerie shadows among the trees. I tried to shake off the sensation, blaming it on my overactive imagination. But then, we heard it. A rustling noise from the edge of our campsite. At first, we thought it was just an animal, maybe a deer or a raccoon. But the sound was too deliberate, too heavy. My dad grabbed a flashlight and shone it towards the noise. For a split second, the beam caught a pair of eyes, reflecting eerily in the dark. We both froze, our breath hitching in our throats. "It's probably just a curious animal," my dad whispered, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. We stayed alert, listening intently, but the noise eventually ceased. We convinced ourselves it was nothing and tried to enjoy the rest of our evening. We turned in for the night, the sounds of the forest creating a symphony around us. I lay in the tent, staring at the canvas above, trying to shake off the feeling of being watched. Just as I was drifting off, I heard it again. The rustling, closer this time. My heart pounded in my chest as I strained to hear. Suddenly, there was a loud crash, followed by a low, guttural growl. My dad shot up, grabbing the flashlight and a hunting knife he always kept close. We unzipped the tent just enough to peer outside. There, illuminated by the weak light of the flashlight, stood a man. He was wild-looking, his hair matted, his body covered in mud and barely any clothing. He held a machete, its blade glinting ominously. Before we could react, two more figures emerged from the darkness, similarly dressed in tattered rags and smeared with mud. They moved with a primal grace, their eyes fixated on us with an unsettling intensity. We were trapped, our campsite surrounded by these uncivilized men. My dad whispered for me to stay low and quiet. He slowly reached for his phone, hoping to call for help. But before he could dial, one of the men lunged forward, slashing the machete through the tent fabric. We scrambled out, adrenaline surging through our veins. We bolted into the forest, branches whipping at our faces, our breaths ragged with fear. The men chased us, their guttural sounds echoing through the trees. The forest was a maze of shadows, each step fraught with the danger of tripping over roots or colliding with low-hanging branches. Desperation drove us forward, my dad's strong hand gripping mine, pulling me along when my legs felt like they would give out. The sound of our pursuers grew louder, their footsteps heavy and relentless. My lungs burned, my vision blurred by tears of terror. Then, through the trees, we saw it. A ranger's cabin, its windows glowing faintly with light. It was our beacon of hope. We pushed ourselves harder, the menacing presence behind us urging us on. My dad banged on the door with all his might, shouting for help. The door flew open, and a grizzled park ranger, rifle in hand, yanked us inside just as one of the men lunged at us. The door slammed shut, the lock clicking into place with a resounding thud. The men outside pounded on the wooden barrier, their furious growls sending chills down my spine. Inside the cabin, the ranger ushered us to a corner, his eyes sharp and alert. He quickly called the police, his voice calm but urgent. "Hang tight," he said, positioning himself by the door, rifle at the ready. "Help is on the way." We huddled together, my dad and I, our breaths coming in short, ragged gasps. The pounding on the door continued, but the ranger stood firm, his presence a reassuring shield against the madness outside. Minutes felt like hours as we waited, the tension in the room thick and suffocating. The men outside continued their assault, but as the wail of sirens approached, their rage turned to uncertainty. The pounding ceased, replaced by hurried footsteps retreating into the woods. Moments later, the police arrived, bursting into the cabin with flashlights and weapons drawn. They combed the area, eventually catching one of the men. He was wild and incoherent, muttering in a language none of us recognized. The police told us that these men were likely part of a group living off the grid, surviving in the forest for who knows how long. They were elusive, rarely seen by outsiders. The man they caught was taken away, but the others remained out there, hidden in the vast wilderness. To this day, the memory of that night haunts me. The forest, once a place of peace and adventure, now feels like a domain of unknown terrors. So, if you ever find yourself camping in the woods, stay vigilant. You never know what or who might be lurking just beyond the campfire's glow. It happened back in the 80s, during a college hiking trip. I've tried to forget it, but some things just won't leave you. So, here it is. Maybe sharing it will help me finally move on. It was the summer of 1986, and my buddy Mike and I were both juniors at college, eager to take a break from studying and enjoy the great outdoors. Our university organized a hiking trip in the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest. About 20 of us, led by an experienced guide, set out one bright morning, excited for an adventure. The trail was breathtaking, with towering trees and the scent of pine in the air. We followed a well-worn path, our guide pointing out various plants and animals along the way. As the hours passed, Mike and I, always the curious types, started to lag behind the group, engrossed in our conversation about a recent science fiction movie we'd seen. "Hey, let's check out that ridge over there," Mike suggested, pointing to a small hill off the trail. I hesitated for a moment, but the thought of exploring the unknown was too tempting. "Sure, but let's not stray too far," I replied, already veering off the path. We climbed the ridge, laughing and joking, completely unaware of how quickly we were losing sight of our group. By the time we realized we couldn't hear their voices anymore, we were well and truly lost. Panic set in as we tried to retrace our steps, but everything looked the same. Endless trees and undergrowth. We shouted for our friends, but only the echo of our own voices answered. After what felt like hours of wandering, we stumbled upon something strange. A patch of ground that felt different underfoot, more metallic than earthy. Curious, we started clearing away the leaves and dirt, revealing a large rusted metal door embedded in the forest floor. It looked like something out of a war movie, a hidden bunker. Our curiosity piqued. We searched for a way to open it and eventually found a heavy, old-fashioned latch. With considerable effort, we heaved the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. A musty smell wafted up from the dark abyss below. Flashlights in hand, we cautiously descended a narrow, rusty ladder into the bunker. The air grew cooler and damper the further we went. At the bottom, we found a long, dimly lit corridor. The walls were lined with faded, peeling posters and old, rusted pipes. The bunker seemed abandoned, but as we ventured further, we heard faint, muffled voices. Our heart rates quickened. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. "Yeah. We need to see what's going on," Mike replied, his face pale but determined. We followed the voices, turning a corner to find a heavy steel door slightly ajar. Peering through the crack, we saw a room filled with young girls, their ages ranging from early teens to early 20s. They were dirty and scared, some crying softly, others staring blankly into space. It was a scene of utter despair. "What the hell is this?" Mike muttered, horrified. "We have to get them out of here," I replied, my mind racing. "But we need to be careful. Whoever put them here could come back any minute." We slipped into the room, trying to reassure the girls in hushed tones. "Hey, it's okay. We're here to help you," I said gently. Their reactions varied. Some looked at us with wide, frightened eyes, while others seemed too weak to respond. A few of them appeared malnourished, their faces gaunt and their limbs thin. One girl, who looked about 17, finally spoke up. "Are you going to take us out of here?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes, we're going to get you out," Mike said, trying to sound confident. "But we need to move quickly and quietly. Can you walk?" Some nodded, but others shook their heads, too weak to stand. "We'll help you," I said, turning to Mike. "We'll have to carry those who can't walk." We gently lifted the weaker girls, their bodies alarmingly light, and guided the others towards the ladder. It was a slow, tense process, every creak of the ladder making my heart leap into my throat. We kept whispering reassurances, trying to keep the girls calm. At the surface, the afternoon light seemed almost blinding after the dimness of the bunker. We helped the girls out, one by one, and quickly tried to figure out which way to go. Luck was on our side, as we eventually encountered another group from our hiking trip. They were shocked to see us, and even more shocked by the state of the girls. Our guide quickly took charge, radioing for help. The other students in our group crowded around us, their faces a mix of confusion and concern. "What happened? Where did you find them?" one girl from our group asked, her voice shaking. "It's a long story," Mike replied, glancing back at the girls. We need to get them to safety first. Within the hour, the police and ambulances arrived, their flashing lights piercing through the forest gloom. The officers and paramedics swiftly took over, providing immediate care to the girls and questioning us about what had happened. Mike and I were in a daze, trying to make sense of the chaos around us. We recounted our story to the police, our voices shaking as we described the bunker and the girls' condition. The police assured us that they would investigate thoroughly and take care of the girls. As the ambulances drove away with the girls and the police began securing the area, we were offered a ride back to the university. The journey back was quiet, our minds racing with what had just happened. We expected to see news reports about the raid, to hear about the criminals being caught and the girls being reunited with their families. But days turned into weeks, and there was nothing. No reports, no updates, as if it never happened. To this day, I wonder what really went on in those woods, and why it was kept so quiet. Mike and I tried to put it behind us, but the memory of those terrified faces lingers. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that sometimes the darkest secrets are hidden in plain sight, buried just beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. Stay safe out there, and trust your instincts. You never know what you might find when you step off the beaten path. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed these stories, please like and subscribe for more.